Hey everyone, good afternoon, morning, evening. I think I covered all the different times there. Thanks for joining my talk today. My name is Kemet and I'll be talking about the React Dev Tools, specifically the React Profiler. We'll be doing a live demo as well with a very stripped down, minimal to-do app. Been using Twitter a lot these days and you can find me on there, as well as my GitHub over there. Cool. So the agenda for today is I'll start off with a brief introduction about myself and an overview of the talk. Afterwards, I'll talk a bit about the React Profiler, sort of what it is, why React developers should use it, different use cases. After that, I'll do a demo I'll demo the Profiler using a to-do app. And then afterwards, I'll provide some additional resources for those that want to learn more about the Profiler, the React Dev Tools in general. And then afterwards, we'll do Q&A. And so a little bit about myself. My name is Kemet. I'm an engineer at Microsoft. I work on the Teams product, which is our workplace communication tool, mainly focusing on meeting-related features. Previously, I worked at a small startup that was doing marketing tech. And much of my experience with React is from working at both of those places. My interests kind of vary a lot, but lately I've been into, three things really. Lo-fi house. If you're not sure what it is, you can look it up. Hint, it's a sort of underground music genre. Been into tennis, so playing a lot of tennis as well as watching the Wimbledon tournament going on right now. And cats. I have a orange tabby of my own. His name is Chucky. He just ate, so he's probably sleeping, which is probably for the best. Just a quick note that opinions stated in this presentation are of my own and in no way reflect my current or previous employer. And just a reminder about Q&A that we'll save that to the very end. Cool, so let's get into it. And these two screenshots represent the two different components of the React Dev Tools. But what are the React Dev Tools? The React Dev Tools are a set of tools to help you work with your React app. It helps you inspect your different components, stuff of that nature. And it's really comprised of two different components, for lack of a better term. There is the component section, which we see on the top right. This is for inspecting your components, basically understanding the different component architecture tree, the props that get passed in, information about the props, so on and so forth. And then you have the profiler section on the bottom, the photo on the bottom right, which is used for sort of inspecting performance for your React app. And the profiler is what we'll focus on today. So with a profiler, you can sort of record, or what they call profile, a given scenario and inspect it to get some more information about it. And lastly, the React Dev Tools is available as both browser extensions for Chrome and Firefox and as a standalone package that you can download via NPM or Yarn. Cool, so let's get into the app that we'll be demoing with today. And we'll just go straight to the live version. So I purposely built a not optimized version of this to-do list to sort of really exaggerate the different use cases or the different parts of the React Profiler. And so just quickly going through the component architecture, we have three components that comprise this to-do app. We have our individual to-do component up top, which is responsible for adding a to-do. We have the to-dos itself, which comprise of the individual to-dos. And then the last component is the individual to-do itself, which has the button with an on-click handler that completes the to-do. And so on the right-hand side, I have my Chrome DevTools open. I've installed the React DevTools, so we have access to the components section, which I talked about earlier, but more importantly, the profiler section. I generated some information because I was running some scenarios earlier today, but we can sort of profile our app if we wanted to sort of inspect what was going on. And so in this case, I want to record a scenario in which I'm adding a to-do. In this case, I want to go ahead and record it. So I'll go ahead and start profiling. And what do I need to do today? Play some tennis. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to do, and that's my scenario. And so here we've seen some information that's populated, and I'll walk through the different parts of the profiler, the different components that comprise of this profiler. So in this main section over here, we have what's called the flame graph. The flame graph is really just the section that shows the component tree for the current commit, as well as including rendering information about each tree. And just a reminder that in the React world, commits are the changes that actually get applied to the DOM versus a render, which comes before the commit phase, which is React trying to figure out what changes to get applied. So it's React phase, the render phase, followed by the commit phase. And so the flame chart sort of shows the different components, and there's two main parts of it. There is the rectangular bars of different sizes, as well as those colors. And so in terms of the length of the bar, the longer a bar is relative to the other bars, the more time it took to render. So in this case, our parent component, the not optimized to-do list, that's what it was called, that's what I called it, took longer to render than the individual components, than its individual child components, like the to-do input, as well as the to-do list. So in terms of the colors, the yellower a bar is, the more time it took to render. So that we see that in the case of the not optimized to-do list, took longer than the to-do input to render. And that goes to the idea of the blue color. And so the blue color means that it took less time to render. So the to-do input, a child of the not optimized to-do list parent component, took a little bit longer, took shorter to render. And then in terms of the gray color, that means that it did not render for this specific commit. So we can see that up top, and this is just mainly the overarching app component and the configuration and the router that I hooked into when creating this app via Create React App. And so these didn't render for a specific, commit. Up top, we see the commits overview. And over here, it sort of gives in information about all the commits. And again, the commits are the changes that that lead to the actual DOM updates. And so we're looking at the first commit, and we see 17 commits. And so the way we can think of this as is going back to the scenario. So the scenario was adding that individual to-do to play some tennis. And you can imagine somewhere along here, the 7th out of the 17th commit is where I was actually typing in maybe one particular letter of that that to-do that got added to the to-do list. And so in this section, we can see the different commits for that given scenario. And again, the rules with the length of the bar and the color also apply here. So the higher a bar is, the more height it has, the longer it took to render. And the colors means that blue took less time to render compared to the yellow. And so another section we have here is commit information. So when we investigate or look more into a specific commit, we can get some information. The really important figures are the committed at and the render duration. This will tell us how long it took for a given commit to render. So in this case, for commit number 4 out of 17, it took 1 millisecond, obviously very fast, but you can imagine a very complex app that it might take longer to render that you were not expecting. And here we can sort of like dive deeper and look into sort of the problems that were causing that slow render. And so a little bit else about the configuration, you see these sort of like highlights as I'm typing. This is an additional configuration I added. It's within the profiler section. This is specifically when you go to the general tab, you can highlight the different updates when the components render. And then I added one more, which is recording why each component rendered while profiling. So we have our not optimized to-do list. So in this case, I had change of hooks, which were not necessary since I was just writing, just adding the to-do itself. And so there's also another view. It's not used as much, or in my personal case, not used as much. And this is the rank chart. Just another view. And again, it just orders the components in terms of what the slowest render to the fastest render. That makes sense. And so basically, this is the information that you'll be looking into when you're using the profiler section of the React DevTools. And so going to different resources, both of these are actually, the first one links to the official React docs, which are wonderful. And so you can find out more about the profiler and more in-depth information there. And then there is this really awesome React DevTools tutorial that I found out in the wild. Really helpful. It also includes information about the components section and just working more with the React DevTools. Cool. That's the end of my presentation. I will now take questions. Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And let's go back to it. And you can. Obviously, this simple to-do app, totally not scalable, but also for a lot of devs out there that work on more complex apps. And so different ways you can filter is you can hide your commits for a given, depending on the milliseconds. Obviously, if I do it here, I will lose a lot of the information just because this was a very simple app. And if you saw the rendering information, it was just like a few milliseconds. But here is when you're looking at a component that's maybe taking a few seconds to render, which this is a big deal for a lot of users. You can go ahead and filter it, and this will increase the sort of investigation time, if you think of it, finding that information.
I guess I was also wondering how much of this is part of your day-to-day workflow. Do you use the profiler every time you build something, or is it just when something goes wrong? Or
usually, so in the beginning when I worked at a startup, I didn't really know about the profiler. At Microsoft, a lot more users. I think there's like 140 million users, daily active users for Teams. So I'm looking into this consistently. And before we get before we ship different features or, get our code into this sort of master branch, it is recommended that a lot of the devs sort of use these tools. They also have a lot of internal tools that we use, but I also always found myself using the profiler.
Okay, awesome. That's really cool to know. Well, thank you so much. That was really awesome. I really love the live demo aspect of it. It's really nice to see things properly.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone enjoyed the talk. Thank you again to Evan for putting on this, and also anyone else who helped out with organizing this, and to the awesome speakers.
Thank you so much. Okay.